We see Jordan picking up a hand that's much too strong to be folding here. This time pocket kings off of just shy of 20 big blinds. He's certainly going to be opening this. We'll expect to see Feng folding the Robbie. And action's going to fold around to the big blind Eric, who has a nice looking hand, one he definitely wants to take a flop with, 6-5 suited, and in a spot where he's getting very good pot odds as well. Now, we see a monster flop here for Eric, and this could be bad news for Jordan. It's a spot where Jordan, with his particular hand, is usually going to have the best of it, despite the fact that this board connects with Eric's big blind defending range a little bit better than it does with Jordan's hijack opening range. We see Eric decides to lead at the pot. And it's an interesting spot because if you're in Jordan's shoes, do you want to raise for protection here, or do you want to call out of concern for the fact that your opponent could have flop two pair, or a pair in a straight draw, or something that has a lot of equity that isn't going to be folding? Jordan makes the call in on this turn. Well, roles have been reversed. It's now Jordan sitting on the better two pair. Eric with three pair. It's not going to help him out here. And very curious to see if Eric will continue with a bet here. At this point, any pair in Jordan's range is going to have Eric beat, but perhaps Eric wants to bet to move Jordan off of some floats, some overcards that may have called that flop bet because Eric chose such a small sizing. It's interesting to note that if Eric had just gone for a check raise here, probably would have seen all the money go in on the flop, but as played, it will not be going that way. Now on this river, Eric does have the option to represent spades. He has let out twice, and it would put Jordan in a very tough spot. But should he decide to check here, his pair of sixes is not going to be any good, and Jordan will probably win this pot with a check behind. So you go check. Now the question is it worth going for thin value? Jordan decides it's a little too much risk, especially with those couple of those short stacks in play. Checks behind and is going to be taking this pot down for 12 million chips. All right, next up, we tune into the action with aces in the big blind for Canapong. We've got a couple of hands that could potentially get involved. Ace-7 suited being the most likely when folded to. We would expect Timothy to probably shove here for 6.5 blinds with Ace-7 suited, but instead we get a raise from Feng Zhao off of 20 bigs with pocket threes. Not the most premium of hands, and a pretty awkward stack size to be opening from. I would typically expect this hand to simply go in the muck, but Feng decides he wants to play. Now the question is, does Canapong want to 3-bet here and try to get it in against the strongest hands in his opponent's range, or just slow play? He goes for the just call here, and I like it quite a bit. We have a couple of very short stacks in play, which makes for, better 3-bet bluffing opportunities, but ace is a fantastic hand to slow play, especially 20 blinds or shallower. It's a flop that's got to make Feng feel pretty decent about his hand. The board's paired, meaning there are only 5 cards that can make a pair as opposed to 9. And there are no face cards out there. So he follows it up with a bet here post-flop, hoping he has the best of it. I think I would love to see Canapong continue with his slow play here. When you get a paired flop with aces, your opponent's drawing very thin and often dead. And I love that just call there. Now with 9 million in the middle, 16 million behind, not too much required to potentially get all the chips in. And Canapong thinking about doing something fancy. Ooh, I love this. Leads out for 20% pot. A price that's so cheap, it is impossible, almost impossible for your opponent to fold a pocket pair. And if they have something with any kind of draw, they're continuing. And if he has just an ace-high type hand, he's probably not putting any more money in the pot anyway, or a king-high type hand. He's probably just checking back. So I like this lead here, ensuring that Canapong gets to extract some more value from those pocket pairs, and also just takes a strange looking line that could lead to, a very light lookup from Feng. River brings in the 4 of spades, completes the flush. Canapong blocks it. And I wonder if we'll see him lead one more time. It feels like something like 4 million could probably get called here. He goes for 5.4. And Feng only beats, missed gut shots at this point. The straight draw, or the spade draw got there. Any pair is bigger than a pair of threes. So he would need his opponent to have Jack 9, 7 9, Queen Jack, or something of that nature to be good with threes. He correctly assesses that part of the situation, gets out of the way, and Canapong picks up a nice size pot. thanks to slow playing the aces, extracted an extra few million from that situation, which wouldn't have been possible if he had simply gone for the 3-bet pre-flop. All right, and here we have Eric Mattson, our former chip leader, currently second place on the final table, picking up ace-queen suited under the gun. It's going to be an easy slam dunk open for Eric. And Timothy, interesting spot here, only on 5 million in chips. Still probably not worth calling here, although he is the shortest stack. He's getting decent odds here. But Samuel in the big blind has an interesting situation. He's got a suited hand, and more importantly, he has the chip lead here, and he's facing the second place stack in the tournament. This is the opponent against whom he can apply the most pressure possible, because the second place stack has the most to lose by busting out early on this final table. So you go check on the flop, and this is going to open up the door for Samuel to start barreling. He's got a gut shot here, which is enough of an excuse to bet. His opponent has also checked behind on the flop, which means he's not that likely to be sitting on overpairs. He's probably sitting on a lot of ace highs. And, I mean, that's probably the main things he's sitting on here. Maybe some medium pairs. And so Samuel's going to take that green light and bet 1/3 of the pot here. Now, Eric has turned the nut flush draw, 2 overcards. We know he's not going anywhere. He's going to be calling. Now, backdoor flush draw does not get there. And Samuel's got to think that Eric would have bet most of his front door flush draws, those heart draws on the flop. And therefore, pretty decent spot here for Samuel to go with a big bet here to see if he can move his opponent off an ace high or a backdoor flush draw type hand here. Obviously, 8 high not going to win at showdown. It's not going to beat this ace high, and it's not going to beat a king high. And Samuel goes for a very small sizing. I guess this sizing is designed to fold out king highs, queen highs, jack highs. Not sure if it's going to get an ace high to fold, given that Eric is getting such an incredible price here, 1.5 million to play for a pot of 12. But we will see at the same time, it does look like it's inviting a call, and shows a nice bit of creativity from Samuel Vousden here. Action on Eric Mattson. Will he find the call? And if he does, he'll be taking the chip lead. That's what he does. Finds the call. 8 high, no good. Ace high is the winner. And Eric Mattson, our new chip leader, once again on this final table, up to 75 million. All right, our next hand, looking like we're probably going to see round 2 between our chip leaders. Ace queen in the small blind for Samuel, an extremely premium hand, and king 9 suited in the big blind for Eric. Samuel starts us out with a limp. Has to do with those same ICM implications we talked about previously. A lot of short stacks in play, and as the second place stack, you do want to play cautiously against the one guy who can take you out of the tournament. Eric, as the chip leader, can apply a ton of pressure to Samuel in position, blind versus blind, and so that's why Sam's keeping the pot small. Fortunately for him, flops fantastic. Trip aces, queen kicker, and Eric actually catching a piece here with the king. I think this is a spot where Samuel probably just going to keep barreling here, looking to extract value. The queen does play at this point, and also, a lot of the gut shots, the queen jacks, the jack tens have improved to 2 pair. The flush draws still have outs. And we see Samuel sizing it up here, looking to extract the maximum value from trip aces if his opponent has that. Charging those flush draws a large amount so they're not as likely to peel. And picking a size that a king may be able to call. If you're in Eric's shoes, you're chopping with other kings. You're beating the bluffs, and you're behind the aces. He's got the chips. He's got position. He is going to look up his opponent. And Samuel rivers a straight ace, no longer playing, and a little less likely to be able to get value at this point. What do you think the sizing should be if you're looking to get called by a king? 5 million again? Or do you want to go for that large size, 10 plus million, to get value from the aces? Issue is, all the aces that don't have a full house are chopping. Their kicker won't play. So a half pot bet right in the middle seems appropriate. Will Eric look up his opponent? It's a tough spot. a lot of the hands that would be semi-bluffing have improved to a pretty strong hand here. Question is, does Eric think Samuel would have raised most of his aces pre-flop? Answer is no. He knows he's going to be mixing it up here. And he knows with the ICM situation, the chip dynamics is there, that Samuel's going to be limping in a ton of his range blind versus blind here. He just kind of has to. Eric going deep into the tank here. And finds the fold correctly, recognizing that there's just not much of anything left in Samuel's range that is just going to be pure airballing and betting all three streets there. All the semi-bluffs have improved, and all the made hands have a king beat. So a nice fold there by Eric on the river. All right, next hand, we've got Samuel Vousden looking at ace-10 suited on the button, and Eric Mattson with jacks in the small blind. Blinds have increased since the last hand that we had to 600,000, 1.2 million. Stack size is still pretty similar. Our shorties having about 10 bigs, and our big stacks having about 60 and 70. Eric here as the chip leader. I expect we'll see a 3-bet. And what we haven't seen in some of the hands that were missed between now and the previous one is that Eric has been 3-betting Samuel a fair bit. So with Eric 3-betting a fair bit, Eric having the chip lead, Eric having position on Samuel, I don't think Samuel's just going to roll over and let this hand go. Despite the fact there are short stacks in play, Samuel still going to defend a premium hand like ace-10 suited. And here we go. It's a king, queen, deuce flop, giving Samuel a gut shot. That's not that likely with Eric having 2 jacks and a backdoor flush draw. But a pretty unfavorable flop for jacks here. We're behind the kings, we're behind the queens. And I'm very interested to see how Eric is going to play this hand out of position here in a 3-bet pot. From a range perspective, I think Eric has a slight advantage here over Samuel, so I think it makes sense for him to continue to bet. And a small size feels appropriate here, especially with his particular hand that's looking more to maintain the lead in the hand, get to a showdown as cheaply as possible, not check and start facing very large bets. I like the small bet here. Now on this turn with the Queen of Hearts, Samuel can no longer win with a jack. That would have him dead with a full house versus a straight. But he could still win with an ace, or if he's able to take this pot away. So it'll be very interesting to see what Eric does. Eric checks. Now the question is, does Samuel want to attack this pot? Eric could be checking the occasional king-queen here. He could be checking quite a few king X's on that queen turn. Or he could have a hand like this, jacks, a hand like 10s, a hand like 9s. That should Samuel decide to bet twice, he probably could get to fold. Once Samuel checks the turn, I think we're probably looking at these hands just going to showdown. Curious to see whether Eric will do anything here other than check. Is there any merit to going for a small block bet here? What could he really get called by? Maybe a smaller pair, probably not. He checks, and we'll see if Samuel decides to bluff it. It doesn't really make sense for him to. If he was going to bluff, he probably needs to bet the turn and the river. So instead we see this go check, check, and Eric now extends the chip lead. Next hand, we see an absolute monster for Istvan. Pocket kings in the hijack. Jan Fay, fresh off his double up, probably not going to get involved with these 4s, but I do think we'll see Jordan Sperling get involved with this ace-10 from the big blind. The question is, off of 8 bigs here, as the short stack, does he want to just shove it here against Istvan? Or does he want to play a little more conservatively, take a flop, see if he can flop something like an ace or a 10 before deciding to commit the rest of his chips? The pay jumps here, very big. The money, very significant. Couldn't fault him for playing it a little bit slow. And there it is. Boom, shakalaka. Ace is full of 10s on the flop for Jordan Sperling. Istvan no longer having the best of it with kings. Could only catch up by spiking a 2-outer. Let's see what he does. There's still some value to be had from a lot of Jordan's defending range. The gut shots can continue. Pair of 10s can continue. Small pairs probably would have been all in. And I like Istvan's play here. He's just betting the minimum. Keeping the bet and lead in the hand. betting a size that can extract value from those hands we mentioned before, and also setting himself up to lose the minimum when his opponent does have that ace, or in this case, ace is full of tens where Istvan's drawing dead. Forgive me if I said that he could catch up with the king, because he most certainly cannot catch up with anything. Now, at this point, I think we'll either see, yes, a small bet once again, or a check. Game plan here is probably to bet small to then check behind on the river. And his thinking, probably that if he checks behind here, he'd be facing a larger bet on the river than he would be if he just bets himself 1.75 million. We'll see if that comes to fruition. Jordan checking, expecting to still get value from an ace. And Istvan, all things considered, despite getting outflopped there, played the hand pretty well to lose the absolute minimum. Nice hand, Istvan, and nice chip up for Jordan. And we are now down to the final 5 players on this WSOP main event final table. Canapong picking up ace-jack here. Samuel Vousden with a hand that definitely can continue. The question is, will he just flat? Will he 3-bet? He's going to flat. And, all right, we've got some interesting stuff here. Canapong with the nut flush draw. Samuel with a spade. I think we'll see a bet here from Canapong. Doesn't need to bet big. Yeah. And for this price, Samuel probably going to continue. He's got ace high, which is the best hand sometimes. He's got some equity with that 8 of spades sometimes. And now he's got himself a flush. Unfortunately for him, Canapong has the nut flush. And this is the time for Canapong to go for value. If he wanted to, get hero called by his opponent, he's only going to get one more street. So checking behind and betting the river, not that much better than just betting the turn and checking the river. Not that he would ever do that. But against the spade hands that his opponent could be holding, those flushes, it's important that he bets the turn and the river to try to extract as much value from those hands as possible. I like this half pot bet here. Samuel's probably going to be calling with almost any spade. And then Canapong can size appropriately on the river to try to get paid. If you're in his shoes, you got to ask yourself, am I only trying to get paid by the king of spades? Am I looking to get paid by the jack and the 10 of spades, the 8 and the 7 of spades, or all spades? And based on what portion of your opponent's range you want to get called by, you bet accordingly. The narrower you're trying to get called by, the bigger you bet. You'll get more folds, but when you do get called, you'll also get paid more. So that's kind of the art here of bet sizing on the river. Canapong, thinking about it, trying to decide what that perfect size is going to be. And he says 3/4 pot is the amount. Samuel has a bluff catcher here. He's got to expect Canapong probably wouldn't bet this big with the 10 or the jack of spades. So it's the king or the ace, or maybe even only the ace. And therefore, does it make sense for Samuel to look him up here? We can see the cards. We know the answer is no, but in game, it's a very different situation. If he calls and wins, he'll basically be in second place and there'll be 3 short stacks. If he calls and loses, he'll be in third place. If he folds, he'll be in third place, but it'll be a lot closer. Important things to consider when facing a big bet, be it an all-in pre-flop or a big river bet. Ask yourself, what will my chip position be if I just fold? What will my chip position be if I call and win? What will my chip position be if I call and lose? And based on all 3 of those possible outcomes, it'll really help you to determine whether or not you want to take the chance and you want to take the variance on making that call. Because ICM is a thing, and your chip stack relative to the other ones is very important in determining that calculation. Samuel really giving this one a full think. Does decide to make the call, and he's going to get the bad news from Canapong, who shows him the nut flush and takes that pot down to chip up to almost 100 million. All right, in 3-handed play, Eric Mattson back in the chip lead with 130 mil. Canapong in second with 120, and Feng Zhao third place, 48 million for 24 big blinds. Got a couple of playable hands here. Queen 9 on the button, King 8 in the big blind, and off to the flop we go, which is absolutely fantastic for Eric. Flops top and bottom pair. Feng Zhao sitting on a gut shot. And I would expect we'll see a bet from Eric. Probably on the slightly larger size here, given that his hand needs a lot of protection. It's a very draw heavy flop. And yeah, he's going about 50%, a little over 50% here. Feng with a gut shot. Not a whole lot going on. Don't know that he needs to continue on this board. He does have a gut shot, but not much. And there it is. Okay. Turns a king. It's not the best hand. And it should slow the action down as well. There's a one-liner to a straight now. 10. Makes the king high straight. Eric sitting on 2 pair. Feng top pair. Now Eric checking back. Makes sense. Doesn't expect he can get 2 more streets of value from worse hands. So he's just going to check back. Guarantee he doesn't get check raised. Take this thing to showdown and go for value on the river. Feng checking. And now Eric with a full house. Could go for a large bet here. At this point, a 10 is not going to be folding. And therefore, Eric could go for a very big bet here. To go for some big value against that portion of the range. Now, I don't really expect Feng to be calling here with a king. I think with a king, we're probably looking at about 10 million. Is probably about the cap for how much he's going to be willing to call here. But we'll see what Eric decides to go for. He's going to go for almost 30 million. And wow, Feng Zhao snap calls it. Guess he figured his opponent was bluffing. Didn't expect he'd bet that much with a queen or 10. I don't know. Either way, fantastic heads up action. Eric has built his chip lead back up just a little bit. Blinds are still where they were previously. Canapong picking up ace jack. Eric deciding that the queen tray, strong enough hand to defend. And to his liking, he's going to be flopping top pair. Great board for Canapong to fire a small bet here. Got the range advantage, got position. No need to bet big. And Eric now turning trip queens. He's got to feel like he's got the best hand the vast majority of the time at this point. And it looks like he's thinking about doing something a little unorthodox here. Leads for a very small amount. Not your typical play, but one that often leads to your opponent spazzing out a little bit. Players with the pre-flop betting lead generally don't like to fold when faced with a small bet, especially, you know, a lead out or a donk bet. And Eric gets the call from Canapong, who's drawing dead. Now the question is, what is he going to do on the river? Will he continue with another small bet? Try to eke out a bit more value? Is he going to check and feign that he's given up? No, going for a small bet again. And now if you're in Canapong's shoes, what do you beat? You don't beat a queen. You don't beat a 6. You don't beat a 5. You don't beat the straight draw. 7-4, 7-8, 4-3. Pretty much everything got there. So Canapong can't really beat much, but decides the price is too good and just calls. A really nice play there by Eric. Taking a hand that he knew was best against a hand that had no equity and extracting an extra 6 million in chips. 2.5 big blinds from the situation where had he just check turn, that thing's going check, 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 check all the way down to the river. So nice funky line there to extract max value. It may not seem like it a lot, but every big blind matters and every chip adds up. So great job using that line. 5-6 suited here versus Jack 10 suited. I think we'll be seeing some action here. Eric limping in, guaranteeing that he's going to be able to see this flop, even if Canapong raises. If it's anything, you know, short of all in, Eric will be able to call here and take a flop. That's what he does. And, oh, we have potential here. It's top pair. Good kicker for Canapong. It's an open-ended straight draw for Eric. Off this stack size, 3-to-1 stack to pot ratio. I do not really see Canapong getting away from this hand. And, oh, my goodness. Not only does Eric turn the straight, both players turn a club flush draw. This is going to spell very bad news for Canapong. He's got 7 outs to make a better flush than Eric. Nope, not even. He's got 5 because 2 of those outs would make a straight flush. Eric just calling in position, not giving any signs that he's got the best of it. The 7 you think could maybe save Canapong, but I think with how much money is already in the middle and how little is left behind, this money is going to be going in. Canapong with the shove, Eric Mattson with the call, and that's going to do it, my friends. Eric Mattson wins that pot for 300 million chips, and Eric Mattson is our WSOP online main event champion, taking home $2.8 million. Coming in this final table, big stack, Mr. Eric Mattson, also one of the all-time legends of online poker. Mr. C. Darwin played a fantastic game, put on a fantastic performance, and is a very deserving WSOP main event champion. And that's going to wrap up our review of the WSOP online main event final table. This has been Evan Jarvis for PokerCoaching.com. Hope you enjoyed the final table. I hope you learned lots of great stuff from it. And if you want to learn more from myself and the other incredible coaches at PokerCoaching.com, subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out these playlists, and take what you learned, go out there and get stacking. Once again, Evan Jarvis for PokerCoaching.com. Hope you guys liked the video. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next one.